Yeah, let me invite Ali Hosseini for the final session. After that, we'll have some little bit of time for Q&A.
Good morning, or shall I say good afternoon? Oh, we're still morning. How's everyone doing today? Good, I can't hear you? Fantastic. We're here to talk about industrial IoT, Internet of Things. You know, I got a little bit inspired from Sridhar's speech. He started talking about his mother, and I started thinking about my father, so I'd like to tell you all a story you may not know about me. So my father has been doing electrical engineering for many years, and him and two Indian fellows, all immigrants into the United States, had created the first laptop, portable computer with a tower and a handle. And so I've always been surrounded by electronics and this amazing creativity that my father used to do. He would have a soldering equipment and he'd start, you know, you'd smell it. You could smell it coming out of the garage, and you'd run in as a little child to see what he was doing. It was a very interesting time for me, and you'll see kind of during the time period of what happened. But basically, as I got older, I started realizing my father was building sensors and devices over 30 years ago. And it's kind of interesting, as you were talking about the gas tanks, I'm now reflecting back, and I'm doing the same thing my father's doing 35 plus years later. But what's the difference, right, between what my father used to do and what we're doing now? And a little stat, you know, this is information we've heard for a long time now. The 2020 $15 billion industry that the Internet of Things is bringing into the Indian market. But when you look at industrial IoT, I sat in between Industry 3.0 and Industry 4.0. This is where the transition from mechanics went into electronics. So the difference that my father used to do, everything required a local server, a lot of wires, a lot of things that would be plugged in, and as Sridhar was mentioning, from a safety perspective, was not quite something that you'd actually look to do this time. So Industry 4.0, what is that doing? It is taking the wire out of the picture. It's creating wireless connectivity. It's creating these sensing abilities to be processed at astronomical speeds into the cloud, and you don't even have to worry about it as a business owner or a factory owner. The data sits in the cloud. You don't have to have an IT department anymore to maintain those servers. If there's an issue, you've got it as a service. You pick up a phone call and someone has an SLA in place and they sort your problem out. It's really gotten to that point now. My father used to go down and actually install these sensors and devices with his engineers at these factories. One of the coolest probes he ever created was, you guys heard of Lay's, the chips? So there was this big barrel taller than this floor, and they used to stick probes down into it to determine how much efficiencies and wastage prevention that they could do to produce as much chips as possible. So that was something I always told my dad. I said, "Oh, what does your dad do?" When I was a kid, I was like, "He works for Lay's." But actually it wasn't really working for Lay's, but he was building probes for Lay's, which is pretty cool. So industrial IoT, the global market scene, you're looking at a $110 billion industry by 2020, and it gets into the trillions when you actually look at it from a 2030 optic. How does that reflect down into the overall IoT share? So in 2018, they took 1,600 enterprise companies and they asked them, what kind of projects are you actually doing today with the Internet of Things? And the second most impactful projects of IoT to their business was the Internet of Things, industrial, IIoT. It was actually second to the smart cities efforts that you guys are all hearing throughout the world. Now, if you look at industrial manufacturing for India, what is that actually expecting to do by 2020? It's going to contribute to 18% of India's IoT market share. What does that mean? $2.7 billion, right, of that $15 billion that we talked about. And how is that possible? Now, you see this image? I actually took that photo myself. I physically go and I meet companies and I go to these factories, and I got a very, very awesome experience. I went to this manufacturing. You know what they're making? They're actually making smart meters. They're creating smart meters, and we're talking about industrial IoT, and how do we make it smarter for them to make smart devices? It was almost like a comic book strip, something that you'd get on your Sunday newspaper. But it was 6 to 7 floors, and they did everything from the point of conception of the design, to the firmware writing, to the CAD designs, to the 3D mold injections, to the production mold injections, to the production of the material into the meters and the plastics. And I mean, it was 7 floors, and each floor did something different. And we were talking about not the smart meters, but what can they do to create more operational efficiencies in their production line. I said, how many of these meters are you guys actually producing? And they said 35,000 a week. 35,000 a week, they're producing these meters and distributing them across India. They want to not only do meters, but they want to look at other types of devices and solutions that they can expand their portfolio into. And at that speed of production, what can they do to make it better with the Internet of Things? So we were just walking around the floor and say, okay, so there's maintenance issues that might slow down your production line. So how do you get notifications when your equipment's about to, hit the bucket? The vibration starts to maybe get a little too high, or the sound gets a little too high. So there's actually sensors and devices out there that you can plug into these equipment to get alerts to say, hey, you need to get a maintenance on this. Some of these factories, this one was quite large, can't afford an equipment to go down. It will literally shut you down, and your whole production line could be impacted a week or two. So these are the type of discussions that we're seeing. Now, when you look at what's important to the owner of the factory owners, the benefits of industrial IoT has several different driving factors. But almost 50% of every business owner, factory owner said improving operational efficiency was what they wanted to do with the Internet of Things. And that kind of touches on exactly what I was talking about in the previous slide. But you'll see it goes from everything, operational efficiencies to improving productivity, reducing downtime. Remember I said the maintenance, to asset utilizations and tracking and safety, employee health. If there's an incident, now you got to pull in the insurance companies. So how do you connect everything and keep business moving at the fast pace that everyone is wanting now? So now you got the picture, you got the number driving factors, why everyone's so excited about IoT in India, why is everybody excited about industrial IoT in India. Now you figured out, okay, these are the driving factors. So now what technology do you use, right? Do you use LoRaWAN? Do you use Bluetooth? Do you use RFID? Everyone's got the 5G buzz, but we're not quite there yet. So what I say is you need everything. You don't need just one technology for your problem solutions in this factory or in these businesses. And I've got a case study for you that proves that LoRaWAN, which is what SenRa does, we're a network operator for connectivity for LoRaWAN, and we actually are now doing end-to-end solutions from analytics all the way to the device making. But we are now integrating with other technologies as a hybrid mesh type of solution that will do one key thing. And I go back to what my father was doing, and the biggest thing is in the U.S., why I came to India, one of it is because of legacy systems. The U.S. mentality is, if it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it, right? And that means there's a lot of legacy systems that have been deployed, stuff that my father's installed, and it's working fine. Okay, it could be a little better, but they don't want to invest the money to replace the whole thing and start all over until an incident happens, which will then drive that. But in India, you do have legacy systems, but not as much. But there's a big difference is cost. Everything has to be cheap, affordable, it has to make sense for your business, and it can't cost crores and crores of funding to do it, right? So what are we looking at? we have heard in the metering business, and Sridhar can vouch for it. Congratulations on your big project that you had recently in Maharashtra. But it's a retrofit type of solution. So in the gas metering business, in the water metering business, even in electrical metering, people are looking at retrofitting these meters. Why? Because it costs too much to install new devices. Well, why not take the retrofit to the next level? So what we're looking at is how do we retrofit solutions into the industrial IoT space that they don't have to go and get rid of all this expensive equipment that they've already paid for that may be kind of working but could be worked better with just a little bit of tweaking. So we did this is an actual project that we're doing right now in the industrial IoT space. I say vehicle tracking, but it's a little bit more than that. It's actually, so here's the customer's requirements. They wanted to monitor the movement of the trucks that are going through the facilities, the in times and the out time stamps. They want to send that back to the cloud so that then as the car goes to the next facility, the people can have things ready and loaded up so that it keeps the speed of business. They have 400 plus vehicles coming in a day, and it's really, really time consuming. They need that alert as soon as it comes in. What they were doing in the past was using RFID, which works in some of their locations. So they have a tag reader on the vehicle, they've a RFID tag on the vehicle, they have a reader at the facility at each location, and the reader is plugged into Ethernet, which communicates the data into the cloud through the direct line. Now, what's their challenge at some of these facilities is it's 8 hectares of land. They can't run LAN all the way through their entire facility. It's just not going to work. So now they've paid money for all this RFID equipment, these readers, but they can't send the data to the internet. So they contacted us and said, hey, we have this issue, it's quite challenging. Can you sort this problem out for us? We said, absolutely, we can. And what did we do? Our solution was taking the RFID readers and we integrated LoRa conversion, so a retrofit solution that goes into the reader and allows their existing equipment to remain where it is, but instead of running LAN directly into the reader, now it's sending it backhaul over LoRa. And over an 8-hectare facility, it just takes one gateway from our infrastructure to support hundreds and hundreds of devices. And what also helps is we're now discussing about other devices and other sensors that they can also use leveraging the same network that was installed. So again, they don't have to use different technologies. They don't have to use different networks. They can use one network, maybe a retrofit solution that goes into stuff they've already purchased and be able to do it. And this is the last slide. I know I'm coming close to the end. This is kind of what we did. Another thing I'm proud of is this is one of our first Make in India initiatives. We've done a lot of products for India, but a lot of collaboration, global partners with a lot of R&D investments to convert it into the India frequencies and ISM bands. But now this is actually made by a startup here in India with us in collaboration with our expertise and hand-holding. This is a simple RS-232 converter over LoRaWAN. Now, if you know anything about electronics, a lot of things can work off of a port of RS-232. So this isn't just an IIoT solution. This can take a lot of widgets and gadgets and stuff out there in the space today and take the signal over LoRa if you have the right infrastructure. And the diagram just shows you kind of how that connected, the converter to the reader, and then the wireless communication obviously from the converter to LoRaWAN, and then on the opposite side, the tag to the reader. So I'm really, really optimistic on how India is progressing, how things are going. You saw the numbers. You're seeing real projects. We're doing it. Tata's doing it with hand-holding and help from the government, Mr. Kumar. Things are getting there. Last year when I was here, we didn't have these real projects to show. So you're starting to see the progress, and I'm excited to see what next year brings. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Ali.